Welcome back to the show Disruptors. I'm your host, Aaron Hale, and this is Point of Impact. You might say that today's guest was living a charmed life. A West Point graduate, former military police officer, had a great job on the outside, great wife, great kids, great life, right? Yet something was causing friction. Something was out of alignment. And when everything started coming crashing down, he knew that he had to make a self-assessment and take some serious stock of his life, get it back on track. Today, Erick Rheam has got his life on track. He's living a life of purpose and passion, significance, and he's making an impact. Erick Rheam is an author, coach, podcast host, and speaker. And he's teaching others how to find their life of significance and passion. Before we get into it, please leave this show 5 stars, give it a review, and share it with someone. Make an impact of your own. And without further ado, my chat with Erick Rheam. Erick, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me on here, man. I wanted to ask you a quick question because when you were on my show, actually in the summer, you were about to go out and run Death Valley, was it? And so I was just curious how that went.
Well, yeah, the 4th of July, I ran the Badwater 135, and it went, as you might expect, 135 miles across Death Valley and over 3 mountain ranges. It's hot and hard, but I finished it. In 42 hours and 17 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you could probably make a lot of money if you made a phone app. It'd be called the Aaron, maybe you can come up with a better name, but the Aaron Excuse Eliminator, because I was out this morning and I only ran like 2.5 miles. I just wanted to get a few miles in. I was feeling sorry for myself. And then I thought about you. I'm like, man, he ran 135 miles an hour. What if 135 miles? What if I did that with my eyes closed? You know, would I be? I don't think I could do it, man. So thank you for pushing the envelope.
Yeah, somebody just suggested that. I'm going to try running with my eyes closed. I said, I don't recommend that.
No.
I can be sometimes a buzzkill from time to time. When my oldest came to me, and he just came back from, he just went up to the next age group in his lacrosse team. So he's already a little guy, and he was playing the 10-12. Now he's the 12 to 14 or 13 and 14 group, and he just got beat up by these bigger guys. And he comes back, he's like, I've done so much pain, so many bruises, it hurts. He's grimacing, and you can hear him. He sounds like an old man. Like on a scale of 1 to getting blown up, how does it hurt?
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
It's like, that's not funny, Dad.
That's awesome, man. I love
it. Tell me, what's the latest with you? I would tell you what, why don't we, before we get into all of that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Aaron. Well, my name's Erick Rheam. I'm a professional speaker and author. And I've been speaking now for about 9 years, Aaron. I speak on really human dynamics. My mission statement is I like to help overwhelmed, busy professional men and women cut through the whirlwind so they can rise above the chaos, discover significance, and live in peace. That's my mission. And I travel over the country doing that. I probably speak to on average, about 20,000 people a year. In fact, tomorrow I'll be in Bloomington, Indiana, and the next day I'll be heading to Iowa, and then to Jackson, Tennessee, and then off to Olive Branch, Mississippi, and then Brentwood, Tennessee, and then out to Bend, Oregon, and doing stuff, just crisscrossing the country all the way up through Christmas time, just delivering that message, working with folks, helping folks, giving them some tools and a plan for folks that just want to, have that impact. I believe everybody wants to achieve some level of significance, Aaron, right? We all want to know that we had an impact at the end of the day, right? With our families, with our communities, and our careers. Did you know, I don't know if you knew this, if you ever read this or not, but did you know that you're going to spend a career, about 82,000 hours of your life working in some kind of career. And so if you're going to invest that time, usually spending more time away from your family to create a path for your family, you want to know that if you spent that time in the career, you had an impact. And so that's what I do, is I help people find that significance path once again. And it's fun, man. I'm really enjoying it.
It sounds like you're spending about 2/3 of that time on a plane.
It's funny you bring that up. Actually, I was just looking into that. I spend on average about $25,000 a year on plane tickets. And I was telling my wife, is like, because I used to fly when I was in high school, and I'm really, really considering getting my pilot's license again once the kids graduate from high school. And I told my wife, I said, I think I want to get a plane because, I have some other speaker friends that fly, and they tell me, Aaron, it's like having a time machine. I mean, it's amazing, a time saver. Just if you could get in a plane and get where you need to go. I mean, it's just like, it's something I'm really, really considering.
It's I've had the taste of that the good life with Veterans Airlift Command, and they volunteer their flight hours is those the corporate fat cats that you have, those private jets, but everybody gives them a bad reputation. The truth, like Veterans Airlift Command, they volunteer their planes to fly wounded veterans all across the country. And I've had the benefit of utilizing their services. And I tell you what, it is nice. And yes, there's nothing quite like saving half a day or a whole day, skipping TSA and, sitting around a terminal when you could just pull up and 15 minutes later take off.
Yeah. Well, it's just a phase of life I'm in. Like I said, my kids are going to be moving out here soon, and they're probably going to be in the New York area. We're going to be in the South Carolina area. We're looking to move down there, and it would be nice to just, jump out there and see them for an afternoon and be home for dinner, and not have to look at my app and see if the plane's on time, if it's delayed or whatever. So, it's just, something I'm interested in. But you just brought up, you spend a lot of time in a plane. And so, yeah, that's something I'm definitely considering. We'll see.
What led you to this passion for speaking and educating and inspiring? Where did you went to West Point, became an Army police officer, and then you began working for was it power companies, and then all of a sudden you found a career in speaking. So tell me what were the decision points that came to that?
Yeah. I wish it was all of a sudden. I just, it was a really long, slow burn, really. And, it wasn't until I was 41 that I really figured out what I wanted to do. And between, I would say, when I got out of the military, that was 27 years old, until 41. That was a really hard time and period of my life, Aaron, because I had done everything right. I checked off all the boxes, and your audience probably can really attest to this. I went to high school, did all the things I was supposed to do. I was track, cross country, president of my class, did all the things I was, checked all the boxes, went to college, went to the United States Military Academy, ran for them. They recruited me to run cross country and track. That's why I went there. In fact, the Army at the time had one of the top running programs in the country. By the time I graduated, we were top 10 in the country, and it was really a really good program. So I wanted to run with the best, And the trade-off was that you serve 5 years in the military. So if the taxpayers are going to pay for your education, you pay back the taxpayers with 5 years of your life of military service. I had no problem with that. I enjoyed it. And then when I got out of the military, actually, as I was getting out of the military, I met this young lady. Have you ever done anything silly for love, Aaron? Have you ever done anything stupid for love before?
Stupid for love? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had my dumb relationships before, but it reminded me with the cross country and the running. That is it true? You have something like a 14-minute PR on the 5K.
Yeah, that was pretty cool back in the 90s, but it's not that big now. I ran a 14:18. 14:18 would be I wouldn't probably even make varsity on a lot of Division I schools now, but back then that was a pretty good deal. But now they're running 13:30s, 13:20s regularly. In fact, they're running In fact, my son just ran a high school race, and a guy who won it last weekend ran a 14:48. So they're not messing around, man. They got the new shoes, and they got the new training and all that. So it'd be interesting what I could have done in this environment. Yeah, but back then I ran a 14:18.
No less. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So
I met this girl. Yeah, I met this girl when I was getting out of the military. She was in a little town called Anderson, Indiana, and I ran into her, and I really connected with her. When you met your future wife, it was just, I don't know if it was immediate for you, but for me, it was just like, man, there's something here. And I knew immediately that I was interested in this young lady. Well, of course, anyone halfway decent, Aaron's always got someone scratching around, right? So she had a boyfriend. Ironically, he was a West Pointer. So he was at West Point in New York. I was a captain in the Army. He was in New York. She was in Indiana. And I was in Colorado at the time. I was at Fort Carson, Colorado. I was a Battalion S4 military police officer for Military Police Battalion and logistical officer. And so what I decided was, as I was getting out, that there was a job opening in Indiana, and it happened to be with a local utility. And I could care less about the utility. I thought, well, if I could take the job and be near the girl, then geography, I would win her over. Well, I took the job, and then within 6 months later, that girl and I were engaged to be married, and 9 months later, we were married. So they don't call me A-game for nothing, man. I came in and took care of business, got in the utility world because of that, and then decided I liked it. I kind of like the utility world. I like the utility folks. They're really good people. The mission's kind of cool, keeping the lights on, the energy humming, and communities. That was really cool. And so that started me down this path to go in the utility world. But something happened because, like I said, I checked all the boxes. So I got the girl, right? I got married. We started a family. I started a career. But something funny happened, Aaron, and that is I was miserable. I was like, is this what life is, I was talented, and I had energy, but I had no purpose. I had no way. I had no calling. And I got really frustrated. And in fact, to the point in 2005, I kind of hit a rock bottom in my life, man. And that rock bottom for me came in really three forms. And it all happened within a few months of each other. First was my wife, this girl that I fell in love with. She looked at me one day and she'd been crying, and she said, you're not what I wanted out of a husband. You're not living up to your expectations. And I was letting her down. And when your best friend looks at you and says that to you, Aaron, that was tough for me to take, because all the guys she could have chosen, she chose me, and I wasn't living up to her expectation. The second gut punch for me was my dad and mom came out to visit us when we had our twin boys. We have a daughter, Ashley. She was 2.5, and we had our twin boys. And so they lived in Indiana and we lived in Colorado. So they came out to hang out with us. They wanted to see their new grandkids and they wanted to spend time with us. They were supposed to stay 10 days. My dad and I lasted 2 before we got to an argument, a drop dead, fist fight type of argument. And I literally laid my hands on my dad in anger and threw him out of my house. And he went home that day, and we didn't speak for 6 months. And that was hard because my dad was my hero. He was the best man at my wedding, someone I looked up to. And I found myself laying my hands on my own father and pushing him out and not speaking to him for 6 months. And then around that time, my human resources director brought me in after a week-long investigation. They were investigating me for abusing my power. What happened was, Aaron, is, I just got out of the military and I was treating civilians like soldiers. What works in the military doesn't work in the civilian world, right? And I just lacked awareness. I want to get the mission done. Who cares if it's 9 to 5? It's 5 o'clock. We're not done. I didn't connect. And so they just said, Eric,
you can't grab a guy by the collar and have a little wall-to-wall counseling.
No, you can't. You can't do that, unfortunately.
Well, no.
So I had to learn that the hard way. And they said, hey, you need to take a break. You unpaid leave for a week. And so that led me down a path to kind of figure things out. So I found myself in 2005 with my marriage isn't going well, not talking to my dad. My job was rejecting me, and I had to figure some things out. And so I went on that week-long suspension, and at the end of that week, I really made a decision because I still had my marriage, I still had my job, and I still had my dad, but I made a decision. Something needed to change, And so for the first time, I really forced myself to write down what does a meaningful life look like for me. And I just kind of wrote down where I want to take my life. And what that did is that kind of unlocked some things for me to open up for some things that maybe I could lean into. And then eventually what happened is I started leaning into communication. I started leaning into speaking. And one day I was speaking at a conference just on behalf of my utility. I wasn't making money. I was just speaking as a professional in the industry. And there's only about 40 or 50 people in the room. And at the end of it, there was a guy in the back of the room. And he came up to me, a guy I respected. His name was Dan. And everybody respected this guy. And he came up to me and he said, "Erick, you're really good at this." I said, "Thanks." And he said, "When are you going to do this full time?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "When are you going to become a professional speaker?" No one ever said that to me. But when he said that, it planted something in me, like, maybe I should look into this. And so that really started me down this path to really explore public speaking to where I am now. Fast forward, 2023, I started public speaking in 2015 professionally. I quit my day job in 2019, never looked back, and I've been a professional speaker for the last 9 years, and it's been fun.
That's fantastic. And I agree. You're a great public speaker. In fact, you not only became a professional speaker, but you were you help others for a time become, find their calling in speaking.
I'm still doing that. I'm still helping people do that. Yeah, the Speaker Lab.
Yeah. Tell me, how do people become better speakers?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, I mean, I would tell you that that's a kind of a loaded question. How do you become a better speaker? But I would say there's a couple key things. I work with a lot of professional speakers. I've worked with NBA athletes, Hall of Famers, professional football players, actors, Hollywood actors, reality TV show CEOs. Well, you name it, I've probably worked with them, people that want to get a message out there. Mm-hmm. But the couple things I tell people right off the bat is, number one, and you're good at this, Aaron, is if you could be a good storyteller, you could be a good speaker, because stories really connect with people. And so if you can deliver a good story that people can connect with and a message that's embedded in that story, that's one thing that really makes you a good speaker. The other thing is you have to really identify your audience and the people you want to speak to. And that really comes in two forms. One, who do you have passion for? Like, for instance, I don't speak to high school kids or college kids. I just don't have a passion for that group of people. It's not that I don't like them. It's just I don't connect with them, right? Yeah. I have a passion for people that are mid-career, between 35 and 55. They got mortgages, they got kids, they're figuring things out, kind of like what I was in 2005. And then the other part is you got to have credibility. So where those two things interact, when you have a passion for an audience and you have credibility with that audience, then you can get on that stage and deliver a good message. So tomorrow I'll be speaking at an event with a group of people that I'm very passionate for. It's utility professionals. And because I come from the utility background, they have respect for me, and they're open to hearing my message. So that's what it takes to be a better speaker.
I tend to break all the rules of public speaking. In fact, if I make eye contact with the audience, it is purely by mistake.
Well, I think you get a pass.
So I do want to back up. When you came to that, the rock bottom point, and you said it was the number of factors that were the red flags. And I think one of the biggest ones being your wife coming to you and saying, "You're not the man I intended to marry."
Mm-hmm.
You said something had to change. But how did you figure out what was wrong? If you're having trouble at work and you're having difficulty with your folks, with your family, your wife, how did you find out what was the source?
Yeah. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was a 15-year journey. That's why I wrote the book, honestly, Aaron, Rise Above Chaos, is because I don't want other people to have to go through a 15-year journey to figure it out, right? So I was able to crack the code, but it started with, first of all, I want to say something right off the bat, because one of the things I think, when you hear about people's stories, you're like, because like if I compare, for instance, my rock bottom to your rock bottom, I'm like, holy cow. Well, like you said, Erick, how bad was it to that and being blown up? Well, pain is relative, right? If you're not where you want to be in your life, it doesn't really matter what's going on around you. It's your situation. It's your pain. It's all relative. It's your issue. And in fact, I held that in for a while because I didn't think I had the right to be miserable, because I had healthy kids I had a beautiful wife. I had a great job. I was like, how dare I be miserable, But I was miserable. And here was the issue. And you asked me how did I figure out what was wrong? One of the things I realized, and I actually learned this in the military. They taught us this in the military, and you can relate to this probably. What we taught us in the military is that an idle soldier is a dangerous soldier. Have you ever heard of that? An idle soldier is a dangerous soldier, where when we were in Bosnia deployed, we had to keep our soldiers busy, because if not, they got in their head. They began to think too much. They began to get in trouble. Things started to go down. So we kept them busy all the time. And the reason for that is, and I learned this too, is that taking it beyond the soldier, just from a humanity standpoint, a human without purpose is also dangerous. And so I believe we're all meant to have some kind of purpose, something that we are pursuing, something that we're trying to achieve. And what happened for me was I lacked purpose. I just didn't have purpose. And so when that happens, in the book, there's a unknown force. I call it the beast. I'm a military guy. You're a military guy. And so I have to define an enemy. And so I define this enemy, and I started to formulate it in my mind, and I begin to picture this beast. And what I've learned is that when you don't have purpose, when your body wants to have it, your soul wants to have it, it will be filled with something. And usually it's filled with something negative and destructive. That's when you find people get themselves in trouble, when they just don't have purpose, but they got energy and talent, and that demands to be utilized. That's when they start to utilize it for destructive purposes and for purposes that aren't good. And so I realized I lacked purpose. And so I realized I had to figure out what my why was. So that was a fundamental question I had to figure out. What I believe, and it was in my case too, is that when people lose their why, Aaron, they lose their way. And when you get up and you face the world, and the world is a hostile place, make no mistake. When you get out of bed every morning and you go out to the world, you are facing a hostile world. And if you don't know what your why is, then you're going to get eaten up out in the world. As soon as friction happens, tension happens, conflict happens, you're going to fold, and you're going to avoid and go through the wrong path. So what I had to do was I had to rediscover what my passion was. Okay. And your passion, I believe, is the fuel that helps you rise above the chaos. And so I had to kind of rediscover what that was. And then once I rediscovered my passion, then I had to align that with what I call your superpower, which is, I think, something I'm uniquely qualified to do. Like, there's some things that I'm good at, Aaron, that you can't touch. I can run circles around you on it, right? But there's some things that you're good at that I can't touch, and you can run circles around me. I needed to lean into the things that I was good at, align it with my passion, and then my why begin to formulate. Now, here's the thing for all your listeners. This isn't something that it's an exercise you could do on a piece of paper for 20 minutes and you walk out with your why. This is something that you start to lean into, take steps towards it, like your passion and your strengths. And then what happens is your why begins to formulate in the form of opportunities. You see, when I leaned into my passion for people, that's what my passion is, Aaron. For whatever reason, since I was a little kid, I've always loved to be around people. If there's a group of people, I just want to be a part of it. I just lean into it. Some people will walk away. I lean into it. If I go, like tomorrow, if I go speak in front of 200 or 300 people, that energizes me. That's like 200 to 300 potential friends. And I love people. That's my passion. And then my superpower I discovered was communication. I love to deliver a message. I like to take things that are complicated, simplify them, and deliver that in a way that makes sense. When I began to align those things, what happened over time is that I found myself on stage more and more often. And then when that guy, Dan, came to me and said, when are you going to do this full time? Then that was like a click. I was like an aha moment. It was like, holy cow, this is what I should be doing. But that didn't happen the day after I ended my suspension in 2005. That happened like 3 or 4 years later. But it was 3 or 4 years of me leaning into that, discovering what my why was until I hit that inflection point, and it took me to a whole nother level.
I totally agree. I think there are certain personality types, but not just that. But I think, with our military experiences, I definitely relate my ability to speak, my enjoyment, the passion for getting in front of crowds. It kind of stems not just from the enjoying to tell stories, but also because when I was in the military, half of an NCO's job is to train others. I'd stand in front of platoons, whole entire companies, and give presentations, teach and show and lead. And I loved it. I thrived on it. That was my best part. It was my favorite part of the job, except, of course, getting to blow things up and save lives. But I really did take great pride in passing information, knowledge, inspiration, motivation on to others, because that was fulfilling. It was rewarding for me. It was giving to others was actually a selfish act. So I definitely enjoy that, and I still do today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, one thing I wanted to mention before I forget, because you'll appreciate this. Two of my current speaker students that I'm helping train, or actually one of them's already done, but both of them were command sergeant majors, one from the Marines and the other from the Army. And every time I get around a command sergeant major, I kind of twitch a little bit, because command sergeant majors used to eat lieutenants up for lunch, man. I can't tell you how many times I was humbled by a sergeant major that pulled me aside and kind of told me how life's going to work, And so even when I see him, I'm like, I just want to bow down. I'm like, hey, Sergeant Major, don't yell at me here. Don't don't dress me down in front of everybody. All right, Sergeant Major. Those guys, I feared those guys, but I respect them so much. And so I'm helping two command sergeant majors become public speakers. So anyway, I thought you would appreciate that.
Well, I think there's a little insight in baseball, but I always thought that Sergeant's Major Academy, they had a lobotomy and took out pretty much everything and just inserted publications and regulations. So it's interesting that after service, they would become speakers, unless they were just reciting TMs. I don't know. So tell me, you mentioned your book, Rise Above Chaos. What is it? I think there were 5 points in there. Tell me about tell me about the book.
Yeah. Well, so when I got on the other side of it and I really started to thrive, something actually happened, Aaron, that I didn't expect. I wasn't pursuing this, but it was something that was a consequence in a good way of me figuring out my significant life. Is one thing I've figured out is that chaos never goes away. In fact, you were talking about you had chaos today. You had to go to the ER with your son. It never goes away. And I think at some point in our lives, we always feel like, oh, this is just a season. And then once we get past this, then we'll be okay. But once you get to that season, guess what? There's another season waiting for you. Once you get past one chaotic moment, there's another chaotic moment. And so I think we're all naive at some point in our lives, thinking that the chaos will eventually subside, and it never does. And so that's when I realized that you have to rise above it. And so that I wanted to figure out a way that I can manage a chaotic life, but also enjoy the process, enjoy the moment, and find some kind of transformational significance while I'm in it. But what I found on the other side of it was, and I didn't expect this, is I actually found peace. And that was something that I didn't know I needed until I found it, And what peace looks like is, even though when it feels like the world may be coming down around you, and sometimes it feels like that every step you take, you take it with peace in your heart, because you're doing what you're meant to do, and you're impacting the people you're supposed to impact. And so I discovered that. And once I realized that, I wanted to pass it on. One of the things that's big for me is whenever I find something I find impactful, I got to tell people about it. I don't know if you're like that, but if you go to a really good restaurant, I can't keep that to myself. I tell everybody about it. If I see a good movie, I tell everybody about it. Well, if I discover something that really impacted me, I got to get it out of my heart and get it out to people. So I thought, I'm going to do it this way. And so as I look back and unpack the journey that I was on, I discovered that there were 5 principles that I was able to unpack in my own journey. And what's nice about it is, this isn't theory, man. This is stuff that I do every single day. So whether anybody does it or not, and whether anybody reads the book or not, I'm doing it anyway, because it's impacting my life. And so the 5 principles are pretty simple. The first one is embrace your spiritual journey. So build the foundation that is necessary to start and embrace your journey of significance. So that's number 1. Number 2, tame the beast. Come on now. We all have the beast. We have that negative voice. You have it. We all have it. We can't escape it. It's that voice that keeps you up at night. When you wake up in the middle of the night, Aaron, you can't go back to sleep because you can't shut your mind off. That's the beast. It just won't shut up. And I utilize the 7 elements of the perfect day, is what I call it, to cut through the whirlwind of your life and tame the beast. The third principle is leverage the power of encouragement. It's not what you think. It's not being a cheerleader. That's not what encouragement is. And when you understand what encouragement is, it allows you to unleash the magic behind encouragement to enhance your most important relationships and attract high achievers. Here's the funny thing about significance, Aaron. Nobody can achieve a life of significance without the help of others, right? Think about that. You ran a Death Valley, 135 miles and 35 miles. You didn't do that alone. You had a team. You had people that helped you do that, support you. And so when you cross that finish line, you cross the finish line on the backs of many people that helped you get there. But the only way you're going to have people around you is you got to master encouragement, right? Encouragement attracts people. Number 4 is ignite your influence and manage change. So you want to guide the levers of change to ensure your inner circle takes the journey with you. So here's the thing, as you understand, Aaron, as you evolve and change, if your wife and kids don't evolve and change with you, then there becomes that gap, right? In between you and them and the people that you're closest to. That's why people get divorced after 30 years, because they grow apart. So you got to, if you're going to change, you got to manage the levers of change. We got to do it with people that are with you. And then a 5th one is master communication and human dynamics. So embrace the art of human dynamics and leverage communication skills to form lasting connections. So in the book, I spend the whole book unpacking those 5 principles. And I believe if you follow those principles like I have, then you too can rediscover your passion, so you can redefine your purpose. But here's the important thing. Actually get the courage, Aaron, to do something about it. That's what I want to do. That's how I want to help people.
That's fantastic. Yeah, you touched on some incredible points there. In fact, I love what you say about significance. And we can't be significant without others to be, to interact with. We all want to be heard, understood, and liked or appreciated. We want to have a life of value and feel that we're part of something. So, of course, we need that interaction. We are social creatures. But I love the fact that you paid attention to your pain. It's like when you hit rock bottom, right? Pain is chock full of information if we're willing to listen. It's not, your pain isn't the fire. It's a smoke alarm. And you were paying attention to all these smoke alarms going off in your life, and decided, you better put the fire out. So you started listening to yourself, to your heart, and started leaning into the passion, and that led to a life of significance. So now you're an author, you're a speaker, coach, and now podcaster. Tell me about the show.
Oh, the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it's a companion podcast to my book. It's this Rise Above Chaos. And so, what happens is when I go on the speaking trail, or I go on the circuit, and if I speak to, like I said, around 20,000 folks, usually I'd say about 20% of those folks really want to go on the journey with me, and I want to be their guide. And so I wanted to offer different ways in which people can consume this information and unpack it and then make it work for them. And so the book was one way of doing it. Me publicly speaking is another way of doing it. I've got some online courses for people that really like to consume information that way. And then I've got the audio book, and then I've got the podcast. And so the podcast is a way for me to dive deeper into these concepts and bring people like you on. You came in on and crushed it, man. And this unpacking folks' journey like yours, and talking about how that aligns with some of the principles I talk in the book. And so that's just a place for people that really like this message and they want to go on the journey with me. It's a way for them to do it. It's totally free. And it comes out, I don't do it every week. I do it every other week just because my schedule doesn't allow me to do it every week. I wish I could, but I do it every other week. So twice a month I drop a new episode, and I do different things. I don't all just do like interviews like with you like this. Sometimes I'll do principles from the book. I'll do a monologue on that. Sometimes I'll do book reports on books that really kind of support the concept of the Rise Above Chaos. So I do different things for the audience to add value, but it's been pretty fun. I just passed my 1 year mark a few weeks ago. How long have you been doing yours, Aaron? How long has this one been on?
Mine has been on for about 3-4 months now.
Oh, wow. Good for you, man. Good for you. You're just getting started.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been an incredible asset for me personally, because I get to have conversations with people just like you, and I get to learn one-on-one. Plus, at the same time, I get to share it with countless others. So, yeah, the podcast has been incredible. Of course, there is that the networking aspect of it and the business side of it. But for me, it's a growth process, and I get to practice my own speaking in the process. I've got to also practice keeping my mouth shut and let the guest do the speaking. When you've got unlimited input with the eyes and ears, I tend to get an developed output. But you mentioned your online courses, and I wanted to ask you, you have, it was pointers for, what was it, 7 tips for having a great day.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So here's the thing. When I was on my suspension, I was starting to think about, it was funny because I went to this little coffee shop in Niwot, Colorado. For those that know Colorado, the geography there, that's about 15 minutes outside of Boulder, Colorado. It was about 45 minutes from Loveland, where I lived. It was far enough where I can get away and think about my life, but it was close enough if my wife needed me, I can go home. And so I went every day to this silly little coffee shop. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was right downtown, locally owned, very quaint. Think Lifetime movie or Hallmark movie, just right downtown. And I would get a cup of coffee, Aaron, and I would sit there and just think about my life, right? And unpack my life. And so as I was thinking about where I was at that point in 2005, I realized that every time I got some momentum in my life, there was this unknown force that would get in my ear, and it was like whisper these things, like things I couldn't get out of my head, Aaron, like, why didn't I get promoted? Or how come I don't get respected? Or how come I'm not getting paid more? Or why the people that I graduated from the academy with seem like they're doing better than me? How come my wife doesn't respect me more? All these little negative things I couldn't shut up. And I realized that it was always in my way and breaking up my momentum. And so that's when I gave it the name called the beast, right? Mm-hmm. So then I began to ask myself, can I get rid of this thing? And I realized that's just part of the human experience, man. I mean, there's a negative, dark side to every human being. There just is. And you can either allow it to ride shotgun in your life, or you can tame it. And so I decided I needed to tame it. And the way that I was going to tame it is I had to wake up every day with some basically a strategy, right? A tactical plan that I was going to do to protect myself and insulate myself from the beast, because the beast is waiting for us every single day in whatever form it shows up for you. And so I came up with these 7 elements, and these 7 elements are in priority, and they're think of it like concertina wire. You do that real well, right? Like concertina wire, or a barrier that you put around yourself, not from the world, but from the beast. And when you put in element number 1, that's 1 layer of defense. Element number 2 is a 2nd layer of defense. And you build these layers of defense. At the end of it, you've got 7 layers. And if the beast is going to get you, Aaron, it's going to have to chew through all 7 layers before it gets to you. The problem with most people is we show up in the world exposed to the beast, and the beast influences and drives our lives. That's where most people are at. I decided I wasn't going to do that. So I came up with these 7 elements that I use to insulate myself. These are habitual things that I do every single day that keeps me from the beast. And I created an assessment around that. And I also created an online course for folks that are interested in the self-paced, working through that.
Yeah, what popped into my head was the military parlance: embrace the suck. Yes,
yes.
The chaos will always be there.
Yeah.
Every time you wake up, there's going to be new problems. Things are going to change. You might have gotten used to one thing, and then the next day it's going to be upended. Why did I get that promotion? Well, why am I in a rocky relationship? Why did I get blown up and lose my eyesight? For example, that might be kind of an obscure one, but it comes to mind. But is you've got to embrace this chaos. You got to accept it at first. It's life. Life happens, and you can some things you can't control. In fact, once you let go of the control of exterior things, you have more control over yourself and your reactions. So
yeah. Well, a couple things on the beast is the beast doesn't create chaos. I want to make that very clear. Chaos is just life on planet Earth. What the beast does is influence how we interact with that chaos and how we respond to that chaos. You mentioned I was a military police officer, so unfortunately, I had to deal with a lot of just issues where usually when I showed up, people were at a low point in their life, right? And what I realized is that all of us have stimulus that's constantly happened to us every day, and we have to decide how we're going to react to those things, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, there's a speaker that I know that she spilled her whole entire business on what she calls a 5-second rule, and that is when something happens to you, you have about 5 seconds to respond to what happens to you, and that 5 seconds could change everything. Could change a relationship, could change a career, could change your life, right? And so that's where the beast gets in. The beast gets in with how we respond to the chaos around us. That's why we have to tame it. That's why it's the principle number 2 in my 5 principles, because until you tame the beast, then you can't manage your chaos in a very healthy way, because the beast is going to leverage the chaos to keep you from discovering your significance. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In fact, it's a common thread among those who are successful. Is the same point that Dr. Frankl made in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, is that what separates us from animals is that little point in between stimulus and response, and that's our ability to decide.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, the animal, because when I show a picture of the beast, I show a picture of almost like a wolf-like figure, and the reason why I do that is because the beast, in my opinion, this negative force, it doesn't have a personal vendetta against you, Aaron. It doesn't even care who you are. It's just a machine. And so I use this wolf-like feature because if you think about the wild and a wolf, if you see like those shows when a predator is taken down, like this cute little gazelle, I was like, oh, how mean. Well, predator doesn't care that it's a mom or it's cute. It's just trying to feed itself, right? It's just doing what it was innately made to do. And so that's all the beast is doing. It's just a machine that's responding, and its job is to keep us from getting to where we want to be in our life. That's what the beast does. It's just a machine. It doesn't care your name. It doesn't care who you're married to. It doesn't care what your personal problems is. It just shows up every day and does what it was meant to do, and that is to disrupt you. But it doesn't mean that we just have to lay there and take it. There's a way to do it. If you're proactive and active, you can actually be proactive in your life. Listen, it's not perfect. There's days that, I'm like, man, I shouldn't even woke up today, right? There's nothing perfect, but at least it gives you a shot, right, to get to the other side. And so that's the point of it.
What are some of those pointers? What can you do to keep the beast at bay?
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I could just give you I can outline the 7 elements, and you could tell me which one you're most interested in, and we can just go there. Okay.
Go for it.
Choose your own adventure, man. Okay. So and again, this is an order of priority. Okay. So number 1 is managing your priorities. All right. Number 2, manage your energy. Number 3, work within your strengths. Number 4, live with clarity. Number 5, manage expectations. Number 6, assemble a team. And number 7, build systems. So those are the 7 elements. Which one are you most interested in?
Well, let's start with the first one, manage your priorities.
Okay, manage priorities.
Sometimes sometimes our priorities kind of managed for you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, here's the thing. When I talk about when you take the assessment, and you'll probably put this in your show notes, I recommend everybody goes to the website yoursignificanceassessment.com. Okay, and when you take the assessment, what it's going to do is it's going to show you where you are in your journey to significance, and then it's going to give you some tips on how you can leverage these elements to manage that to get to the next side. Well, the thing with the beast on each one of these areas is the beast has tactics to disrupt. Well, the number one thing the beast does to us is it keeps us busy doing nothing, okay? In fact, John Wooden said, don't mistake achievement with activity, right? Aaron, have you ever been busy and you're just trying to get things done and you skip lunch, you're exhausted, and at the end of the day, you're evaluating, what you actually got done, and you're like, did I actually get anything done? I mean, you were busy, but you didn't move the needle in anything in your life. Have you ever had that happen to you before?
The whirlwind. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's a tactic of the beast, man. It wants to keep you busy. And the problem with most of us is we wake up, we've got kids, we've got jobs, we've got responsibilities, and we're just tacking off things. We're just checking things off, and we're just mind-numbingly just allowing the tail to wag the dog, right, and constantly chasing these activities. Well, what I did is there was a book I read several years ago about this businessman who was very successful in New York City. And this is a true story. I mean, I can't remember the guy's name and the story, but I just remember the story. It was back like in the 40s and 50s. This guy had the best office and the tallest building in lower Manhattan. He was fantastic. Well, like all most successful people, he hired a professional to come chat with him about how he could be more efficient and more productive. He wanted to be more efficient and more productive. And so when the guy came to chat with him, he said, listen, I don't have a lot of time. I just want you to give me your best tip. And so the business professional, the organizational specialist, gave him a 3x5 card. This is before computers and smartphones, right? Gave him a 3x5 card. He said, every day you wake up or before you go to bed, I want you to write down the 3 most important things that you need to address the next day or that day. And then when you start your day, take that card with you. And I want you to look at number 1. Don't worry about number 2. Don't worry about number 3. Focus just on number 1. And if that's all you get done that day, that's okay, as long as it's the most important thing. Then when you get number 1 done, go to number 2. Don't worry about number 3. And then if you get number 2 done, go to number 3. Listen, if you don't get all 3 things done, that's fine. You'll live to fight the next day. If you get 3 things done early, that's fine. Attack some other things. But figure out what the 3 most important things are in every phase of your life, not just work, but everything, a home, your personal life, all those 3 things. So this guy tried it for 90 days. And he said, I'll try it for 90 days and I will pay you what I think it's worth. Okay. So he tried it for 90 days. 90 days later, they get back together to have their exit interview. And the business person didn't say anything. Now think about this. This is in the 1940s, right? He takes out a check and he writes a check for $25,000 and hands it over to the guy and said, that was the most important transformational tip anybody's given me. And the reason for that, the reason why that's so transformational is there's science behind this. And what the science says is that our brains only have so much capacity, so much power, so much energy. And so, Aaron, when you wake up and you start your first task of the day, you start to burn energy from your brain. You start to burn calories and you drain that battery that is your brain. And you have about 80% brain power, 80 to 100% brain power when you do your first task. By the time you get to your second task, you have 60 to 70% brain power. And then some studies suggest by the time you get your third task, you got less than 50%, 40 to 60% brain power. The problem is most of us, we have 50,000 things we want to get done. We set ourselves up for failure before we even start, and we beat ourselves up because we never feel like we get anything done. So one of the first things I talk about in the book, and I give people a tool actually to do this, and that is I challenge everybody to try it for, I don't ask you to marry this or get a tattoo on your body, right, on this. I just say try it for 50 days. And I give them a tool that allows them to do it for 50 days. And I want you to do what that business person did. Wake up every day and write down the 3 most important things. Now, I understand there's probably 50 other things you got to get done. That's fine. But out of those 50, there's 3 that are the most important. And you got to start identifying those and allowing yourself the capacity and the margins to focus on those 3 things. So if you don't get the 4th and 5th thing done, that's fine, but you got those 3. Now, here's the thing, Aaron. This is key. You don't write down the 3 things you want to get done at work, the 3 things you want to get done at home, the 3 things you want to get done in your personal life. I'm talking about the 3 things in everything in your life, holistically. Now, here's what's going to happen. I guarantee it. It gets messy with people when people try this because you're going to drop some balls when you do this. And can I tell you something, Aaron? You probably need to drop some of those balls because you're too busy spreading yourself so thin. You're leaving a mediocre life with your spouse, with your kids, with your work, because you spread yourself so thin. When I started doing this, and here's what's going to happen. When you start doing this, you're going to start to adapt and you're going to start figuring out better ways to approach your day. because you put this boundary in your life. And over time, you start to bend your life towards this idea of focused on your 3 most important things, and then things pop off. I've got tons of stuff I got to get done. I only wrote down 3 things I want to get done today. I got to get ready for my trips for this week. I got to clear out my emails, and I got to hang out with Aaron. Those are the 3 most important things I'm getting done today. Everything else is secondary. So what's your thoughts on that?
I love that. In fact, that's another one of those common threads in success. And I think smart people call it decision fatigue, when you've got 30,000 decisions on average to make every single day, from which shoes to wear, what socks to put on, underwear. And then you get to the important stuff. So why not first take some of those decisions? This is just one of my own tidbits, is take some of those little decisions and put them to the back end of the day before, like lay out your clothes, so you don't have to make that decision. And then the first thing you do in the morning is the most important thing, your top 3, and you just prioritize, so you don't, by the time you get to the important stuff, you don't have that decision fatigue. So
yeah,
I mean, totally.
It's funny you brought that up about the clothes thing. Steve Jobs was famous for this. So when you think of Steve Jobs and you picture him in your mind, you think of a man in a black turtleneck or a black shirt, right? Jeans and white tennis shoes. He wore that all the time because he didn't even want to burn brain calories figuring out what to wear, right? I mean, so people take it to the extreme. So yeah, you're right about that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You gotta prioritize, put the most important stuff when you've got the most energy for it, and then put the less important stuff, get to it after the fact. What was it? The Eisenhower matrix, where you create the priorities based on what needs to get done and what's most urgent, what needs to get done but isn't urgent, what doesn't need to get done but is urgent, or what isn't all that important and isn't that urgent. And you categorize that. And that's what you have to do right away, what you can do later, what you can delegate, and what you can delete.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, some of the stuff I teach in my workshops is I teach people on how to let go of their weaknesses, because I think that's part of the issue, is that we take so much on, especially in areas that are not even strong in. And so my goal in life is I only want to focus on the things I'm strong in, and I want to get rid of everything else. And I've gotten really maniacal about it, like mowing my lawn, picking out my own clothes. My wife does that now. She takes pictures of my clothes and says and I unpack them, and I know what clothes to wear the next day. Just little things like that. I want to get down to where I want to be a husband. I want to be a father. I want to be a professional speaker and writer, and that's it. I don't want to do anything else. And so all those things I take out. So what is a weakness? A weakness are things that drain you, Aaron. Mm-hmm. So you think about things that you get done in a day, and you just think about it, and even thinking about it makes you tired, right? It's like, I don't like doing it. Like shopping, that's something for me. My wife hates going shopping with me because within 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore. I just want to take a nap. Or another weakness is things that distract you. This is one that is kind of a sneaky one, because these are things that you do that you might enjoy, right? But they're distractions. Mm-hmm. Like for me, dealing with my finances. I can look at my spreadsheet and deal with my finances all day long, but it becomes a distraction. And the other things that's a weakness is that other people can do just as good as you, if not better. And so you start taking those things out of your life and focus on the things you're uniquely qualified to do. And that's when becomes easier for you to focus on your big 3.
Well, that's part about, categorizing things as urgent and or important. They might be things that you like to do, but they might not be urgent or important. However, it is important to plan time for yourself, recreational time with the family, for fitness, all of that. But I'm sure in some of the other, layers of, fighting, keeping the beast at bay, and setting up systems.
Yeah. Well, one of the traps with that is that there can be something that's important and urgent, but still a weakness for you. So even though it's important and urgent, doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it. Let me give you an example. My boys are both applying to the United States Military Academy. One just got an early letter of assurance because he's a recruited athlete. I'm really excited about that. And the other one's in the process of hopefully getting accepted. That's a long process. That's important and urgent. It's drawn out. It's tedious. I didn't have the time to sit down with them and do it. So I hired a professional that does this for a living. Mm-hmm. That's important and urgent on the Eisenhower matrix, but it doesn't necessarily mean I have to do it, right? And so I hired someone. I pay him X amount of dollars to do it, and it's time. It's money well spent. The kids get it done, and I can focus on hanging out with them as father and son, and less time on let's figure out. You got to get this thing done. You got to get this thing done, right? And so I took that off my plate, but it didn't make it less important and urgent. I just had somebody else do it.
That's a great point. Speaking of West Point, how did a West Point graduate who became a police officer ever find a sense of humor?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying I have a sense of humor. That's fantastic. I've always been kind of a goofball, honestly. I've always been kind of the happy-go-lucky guy, and the military had to kind of whip me in shape. I really had to focus, And it's funny, too, because when I was a lieutenant, I remember I had to take over a platoon up in Germany in Hohenfels because they were just have some issues, and they said, Eric, you need to go in and fix some things. I was the highest rated platoon leader in my battalion, so they just said, okay, send him in. And I went in, and I came in with this hard line because that's what they taught us at the academy, right? And you know this in the military. You start with high standards, right? Because you can always lower them after the fact with soldiers. But if you come in with low standards, you can't raise it after the fact. So I came in with really high standards. But then as things started to work out, then I started to become normal around them and started joking, having fun. I remember my platoon started saying, man, you're totally different now. I didn't know you had it in you, So yeah, you're sometimes it forces you to be somebody you're not. But my default is I just want to have fun, Aaron. That's my default.
I wanted to ask you also about living this life of significance. Do you have any tips for the listener for, what do you think is one of the top lessons you would give them for making an impact in the community and what that means for living a fulfilling life?
Yeah. Well, I would say that the first step I would say is what I did when I was on my last day of my suspension in 2005. And I kind of hinted on it, but I'll reiterate it because I think this is important, is I would recommend everyone that's listening that really wants to go on this journey, the first step is I would take out a piece of paper, take out a pen. I think something magical happens, Aaron, when you take stuff out of your head and you write it down. I think something triggers in your soul. I don't know why that is. I don't know the science behind it. I just know that when I write something, it becomes real, right? And especially when you write something aspirational, because then your mind and body and soul tries to figure out a way to live up to that expectation. It's weird how that works. And so what I did on Friday of that last day of suspension is I wrote down for the first time what a meaningful life looks like for me. I mentioned that, but to go one step further, if the audience wants to do this exercise, is I wrote down 3 areas. Number 1, for my career, right? What does a meaningful life look like in a career for me? Number 2, with my family. Okay, what does a meaningful life look like with my family? And then 3rd, personally, just me. What does a meaningful life look like for me? And when I wrote it down, I looked at it for the first time as the ink was drying on a piece of paper, and my soul became aligned with that. And that gave me permission to take the next step. Now, one thing that you could do that I find interesting, and I did this once with my family. This was during the pandemic. It was my birthday, April 18th. If you want to send me a birthday card, Aaron, feel free. But on April 18th, my family said, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I said, one of the things I want to do is I want everybody to write down a letter to themselves 1 year from today, April 18th in 2021. So my birthday was on April 18th, 2020. And I want you to write down in present tense what you want life to look like, And so I had asked every one of my family members to do that. Then I took it from them. I put it in an envelope and I put their names on it and I just tucked it away. A year later is my birthday and everybody forgot about those letters. And I pulled those letters out, and as I asked them, I gave it back to each of them, and I asked them to open it up and read it out loud. And it was such a, I don't know, it was it changed the dynamic and the energy in the room as every person read out loud what they hoped, what their life would look like 1 year in advance. And it was funny to see how things came true and how some things didn't come true, but it was also cool to see what people were thinking. And so I think that's something you might do as an audience, an exercise is on your birthday. You don't have to have your family do it like I did. Just write a letter to yourself and then open it up and read it back to yourself 1 year later. Get in that habit. It's really kind of a cool exercise. But at a minimum, I'd write down what a meaningful life looks like to you, and then that's the first step.
And what was the prompt for what will life look like in 1 year in present tense?
What was the prompt? The pandemic, dude. I mean, it was like April 18th. Think about that. I mean, we were 1 month into lockdown, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a public speaker. And my whole job, Aaron, is predicated on people gathering. And so I lost $200,000 in a week. Okay. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess we're going to be homeless, and trying to figure out how does a public speaker survive when the public is no longer. There was no public. It was just everybody was hanging out in their houses. And so I just said, man, I got to go through this exercise. This is something I can control. I can control this. And I wanted to write down what I wanted to be from a year. Because for me, it was better to look a year in advance than to think about what was happening in the present. Because I was getting pretty nervous. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And so I like to go into the future and think about what life could be. And I wanted everybody to do that with me. So, because we were all going through stuff. You too. I mean, we all have our own stories, but that's why I did that.
Yeah. In black swan events, people become rich and people become poor. Some people find greatness and some people get broken. It's just a major chaos event.
Yeah.
I love that exercise. I think I might have to steal that and use it on my family.
It's great.
Like a variation on vivid vision. Write down in present tense what 3 to 5 years looks like. But the only difference is you're tucking it away for a year, whereas so vivid vision is more like a vision board that you read and remind yourself daily. This is what I want my life to be. I think it's a fun game and a fun exercise, and I'd love to hear what my wife and my son, I'm not sure what the twins, the 4-year-olds, would scribble down, but it'd probably involve cookies.
Yeah.
It was, I really do appreciate you sharing your wisdom, your experience, your backstory. This has been a fantastic conversation. I want to respect your time. And to wrap up, if somebody wanted to hire you to speak, start, any of your, start reading or learning from any of your resources, a book, podcast, is there somewhere they can connect with you to find more information?
Yeah, there's going to be 2 things I recommend. One, just in general, you can go to my website, which is just my name. And you know what's interesting about this, Aaron? I'm the only Erick Rheam in the world. If you Google, right, I'm the only one. I think my mom must have been way ahead of her time when she picked my name, right? Because my name is spelled ERICK, right? And then RHEAM. So erickream.com, and you can find out all good information there. But one of the things I recommend is if people want to step into this journey, and I got a free resource for them, all they got to do is go to yoursignificanceassessment.com. All one word, right? Just write it. yoursignificanceassessment.com. You can also find it on my website too, but that's a good place for people to go. You'll probably put it in the show notes as a link, and they can go check it out and take the assessment. And what's going to happen is it's going to give you your assessment score, and it's going to email you an ebook that explains your score and gives you some tips on how to leverage the 7 elements of the perfect day to take it to the next level. It's a really fantastic resource. I think they'll like it.
Okay. As they say, link in the notes. I want to thank you. And, they had me thinking, reminded me that I once unwittingly got put into this messenger thread, all Aaron Hales. It must have been 6 or 7. Somebody created this, like, hey, where are all you Aarons at? I'm leaving. Don't ever write me again. By the way, whoever's got aaronhale.com, I want it.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
But don't talk to me. And if I appreciate your time, I appreciate you sharing your wisdom today, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, you too, my man. It was been a pleasure hanging out with you. You crushed it on my podcast. You should put a link to that podcast in your notes. People want to go hear it. It's fantastic. And it's just an honor being on yours as well, Aaron. Thank you.
Will do. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, Eric.
You too.